Hello everybody and welcome to Who's the Boss? This is a video where I'm going to go over each bounty hunter's leadership and the circumstances in which you might want to go with it. Not every bounty hunter leadership is going to be something you want to go with, but the faction is very unique in that every character has a leadership. That's just by design because they all have that payout system where if they complete their contract, they get the payout, and some of the leaderships are only useful because of their contract and the ease of getting it or something or a certain situation, and others are just a very strong leadership even without the contract. A viewer suggested that I do a video going over when to use each bounty hunter lead, and I thought it'd be a good idea. So starting off, we got Aurra Sing. She's one of those leaders where she's just useful for her contract and the ease of acquisition. I don't have the Zeta, and I don't think you need it, but honestly, I just got her up to useful level, Relic 6. Before a couple weeks ago, she was like a few stars, not even like tier 10. But yeah, you gain offense while stealth for bounty hunter and scoundrel allies, and attacker allies gain stealth at the beginning of the battle, which is helpful for this contract. And it's one of the easiest contracts to get. Use an ability while buffed 10 times. So that even counts basics and it counts out of turn basics. So what happens if she's fast enough, you'll go with her. She uses her ability where she just gets stealth and takes another turn. Or she gains critical chance and offense up, and if she was stealth, she takes a bonus turn. And you're going to want Greef Carga and Mandalorian for sure on this team, and Bossk, and then the fifth doesn't really matter, so you're going to get Bossk to taunt, and then whoever's next, if she's gaining her stealth up, or if it's Greef Carga, you're going to call Mass Assist, and then Bossk is going to call his Mass Assist once he gets his contract off. And then Mando's going to take an Annihilate and kill whoever's there. And this is good for, like, or it used to be good for, like, Sith Empire. You can still do it against Malgus, but it's very iffy. But you want to do it where you have a speed advantage and there's just one big Titan you got to get out of the way on the other team. Boba Fett, he has a surprisingly decent leadership, which you're going to want to use if you're facing a team in PvP that has a very fast character that's very weak. Because the contract is defeat the first enemy to take a turn. So if you can get it to work like that, this could be an even easier contract to get than Aurra, but it's not likely. But also he has a surprisingly good leadership. All allies gain critical 50% critical damage and 10% critical chance. So that's just for everyone, so that's nice across the board. You're getting a boost on damage. But here's where it really kicks in. Bounty Hunter allies gain 15 speed for each debuffed enemy, so that's a max of 75 speed. That's nothing to sneer at. And here's what's really good. Gain max health equal to 50% of the total potency of all Bounty Hunter allies, and gain 15% Terminator when a thermal detonator explodes. The important thing there is, based on potency, you're gaining health. So if your whole team has 200% potency, you're going to get plus 100% health. If you're at the level where you can use Datacrons, it's actually pretty useful if you have a ton of potency on a set 5 Datacron across the board. So say you add 90% potency to everyone right off the bat, that's like 450% potency on the whole team. That's like 220%, 25% health just from that extra potency alone. Even in Kyber 1, I'm using him on defense with Boushh Leia and Krrsantan because I don't have Jabba yet. And they have a ton of extra health from that, and I don't have anywhere to put them with Jabba. Also, I don't have footage of it, but I used this in Territory War on offense with all Hutt Cartel bounty hunters, so the two Marquis, and Embo, Greedo and Cad Bane, and I beat a Shock Bad Batch team because they couldn't attack out of turn, and I had so much survivability because of this. Okay, Boba Fett, Scion of Jango. I'll admit I have not really used him in leadership much, but I think he's worth using in Territory Wars if you have this Omicron, because it bumps everything up crazy. You get plus 30 speed on everyone, 50% mastery, 30% potency, max health and protection, take 18% less damage. Then he himself gains 60 speed, 100% max health protection, and the contract turns to while buff damage a debuffed enemy 10 times. Enemies must be debuffed before they attack, so it's getting closer to that Aurra Sing lead, but not quite. And all allies have their payouts activated and get 25% offense health. Steal, ignore taunt, and when they deal damage when the ability to deal it an additional time. So it's pretty strong in Territory War, but I don't recommend Omicrons for Territory Wars, and this guy's pretty much the worst Conquest character. Bossk. In my opinion, the best all-around bounty hunter leadership. You pretty much always want to use this if you only have one bounty hunter team. It's the best leadership. Gain 50% max protection, 50% tenacity, and 100% defense when you have full health. So not that you have just any protection, it's just full health. So if you get hit under the protection, you're going to lose 100% defense. But the best thing is when you're debuffing or when the enemy gets debuffed or resists. So no matter what, if you attempt to debuff, you're going to recover 5% health protection on the whole team. That's amazing. In endgame, this works very well on Tatooine in Rise of the Empire TB. And it's got an easy contract. Deal damage to the weakest enemy 10 times. So if you're doing cleanup duty, this is very easy. If you can get around taunts, it's very easy, which a lot of bounty hunters can do that have the bounty hunter's resolve buff. And then the payout's really good, 50 speed on everyone. So I think most people are familiar with this. I don't want to belabor it, but best leadership for bounty hunters in my opinion. Boushh Leia, this won't be an early game problem for sure, but I don't think you really want to use her leadership anywhere. She's going to be under Jabba once you have him. And you're not, I mean, she's good even without him. But hers is gain 25% max health protection, which is decent. But her contract is kind of difficult to pull off. Defeat an enemy with damage from thermal detonators. When it's active, it's decent. You're immune to stun, and enemies can't be revived. So I don't know when you would want to use it. I wouldn't recommend using it anywhere. There's plenty of other options with bounty hunters. Cad Bane. Thanks to Bit Dynasty, I know that this is a Galactic Challenge leadership. And he goes with Hutt Cartel, and combined with the Galactic Challenge, a mechanic for Hutt Cartel in his leadership, he pretty much never dies. He gives bounty hunters 100% potency and advantage. But that's not most important. He gets easy contract from inflicting debuffs, which happens eventually with Hutt Cartel and Galactic Challenges, and reduces tenacity of the enemy. But it's really like the mechanics of those Galactic Challenges that make you want him in the lead, because he has a lot of evasion, and he has natural evasion. Let me see. It's like now when he gets his payout, he has 25% evasion, so that's pretty decent. And he just stays alive forever and stacks protection up or bonus protection from that mechanic, and you can win these Galactic Challenges with low gear Hutt Cartel. I haven't seen one in a little bit. I think they realize they're easily cheesable. I hope they don't change the mechanic though. Hey, Dengar, he actually does have some use. His contract is pretty easy to get in certain circumstances. It damages the healthiest enemy 10 times, so it's like Bossk, but the reverse. And this can be doable when you're facing like a really strong tank that you can't get around, and you have to damage them. They keep healing up, and they're just not going down. This rarely could work for Malgus, like a solo cleanup, and you can get a lot of hits on him and get to a contract. Solo Malgus, did I say Malgus? I meant Malgus, solo Malgus, Malak too, but it's just for the contracting. You're going to need the Mandalorian on your team to do that. The leadership itself isn't that great other than the contract. You get 50% health steal. Enemies have minus 50% critical damage. And then when you get the contract, enemies lose 20% damage. So it's all about nerfing their damage, and what you get yourself isn't too great, but it's all about the contract for him, and it's very niche. So just for PvP, when you're facing a really strong tank you can't get around, and they're not going to kill you before you can get it. Embo. I personally wouldn't recommend using this lead anywhere, but some people love him. Once you have the Zeta, you just gain offense up on your turn, but I don't have that Zeta, and his contract is damage an enemy without Bossk 15 times. Very difficult to do. All bounty hunters get 50% counter chance, which is the nicest thing about it in my opinion, at 50% health steal. So you're only really healing up if you're below protection, and at that point you're pretty much in a bad spot. You do get 50% offense, which is really great, and then when you use a basic ability, you're doing 7% of the target's max protection damage. So that payoff is nice. It's very nice, but it's hard to get to, and he's not that great. In Territory Wars, he has an Omicron, which is fine, but I still wouldn't recommend using him. The only times I've used him is against trash teams in the back wall of a Territory War. Otherwise, I've never used him in the lead. Fennec Shand, amazing bounty hunter, and very specific role for her. She basically goes against Lord Vader, which is a limited role, but it's very important. because that's a Galactic Legend strong one. And it's working. It worked to some degree even with the cooldown reduction Datacron combined with Greef Carga and Bossk. But now without that Datacron, you combine her with Greef Carga and the original Mandalorian, and it's great. And it's mainly because her contract is really easy to get against a debuff heavy spamming Lord Vader team. Once he does that initial AoE, you can just cleanse 20 debuffs, and then you get your contract. And then all Bounty Hunter allies or Scoundrel allies get 20% defense, and Overconfident, which is a nice debuff that acts like a buff. All it does is remove a little bit of defense, which is basically solved there. Overconfident, yeah, mine is 20% defense. So the contract removes the downside of that and gives you 50% offense, 10% speed, 15% evasion. But her leadership is all about her. She gains 100% defense, max health, protection, and offense. So that's just flat. So if she goes in by herself, she gets all that. But then you reduce it by 25% for each ally. So in 3v3, she's getting 50% of these things, which is great. She's strong, and she's dealing damage 5 times, which is 50% more if they have no protection. So she's basically, I don't know if it was designed intentionally, but she's basically a Lord Vader killer. And we've seen that time and time again. And if you're at the beginning of the game, she still could be useful, but just not as a leader. Greedo, pretty much never. His contract is deal an enemy with less than 50% turn meter 10 times with a basic ability, and you just get 50% crit damage at the gate, and that's his whole leadership. Like, there's no extra clause, just gain 50% crit damage. It's a difficult contract to get, and then you get another 50% critical damage. With the current set of Datacrons, I can see you getting someone to go first and get 100% turn meter, being the weakest ally, like Bossk. If you can make him the weakest somehow, call everyone to assist, and you get a lot of basics. And then if Greedo went off and just kept hitting basics, you could get that contract immediately, because they wouldn't have any turn meter. Otherwise, it's terrible. Don't use it. Greef Carga, amazing character, lackluster leadership. You don't want to use it. His contract is attack out of turn 20 times. I mean, it's not the hardest to get. It's just really long. So it would just take a really long, just too much. You get some decent max protection bump. And whenever you get a buff, you're recovering 5% protection, so that's okay. That payout is 20% crit chance on offense. But I just don't see an instance where you want to use this one. IG-88, he's not really someone you want to use as a bounty hunter lead. He did get used leading the General Grievous nuke team with a bunch of weak droids that are just going to die off the feed. General Grievous turns, because he gives out critical chance and damage over time when they score critical hits. That helped a little bit, I guess. But his contract is score crits against debuffed enemies 10 times. So it's pretty easy. If you get an AoE debuff out there, you can get it pretty fast. But otherwise, I still don't think you should use him in any game mode as leadership. Jango Fett. This is another decent leadership that I really like for PvP, especially if you're early game. It might be a better choice on defense if you're going to sit some bounty hunters. So the leadership itself is strong because all Scoundrel allies, not just bounty hunters. So I throw dash with him sometimes and like nest. You get 30 speed. Enemies have minus 20% potency for all debuff on all bounty hunter allies, and then they have minus 40% tenacity, just flat. So this kind of shuts off debuffs eventually, unless they're irresistible. If you have enough debuff, it's like a ceiling for debuffs on your team. Enemies that are burning can't gain bonus turn meter. That's great. So if he starts out with his AoE and he gets a lot of burning, you're going to shut down turn meter. And then allies with bounty hunter's resolve get 35% offense, which will be like him, Boba at the start, Scion, Jango, maybe the Mandalorian. But then when you get the contract, everyone gets it, and 25% crit chance. And the contract is damage a debuffed enemy 20 times, so it's a harder version of IG-88. But you can do it. I mean, if you had dash with him, he could go first, debuff everyone, and then you just get some AoEs out and get your contract. And that's really annoying because everyone has bounty hunter's resolve. And he has an amazing payout because he gets damage immunity for 2 turns and 50% offense, which is incredible. So I really love his leadership. I throw it on defense when I just want something that'll steer out banners and I don't have a use for him on offense. On 3v3, he goes with Newt. He used to go with Separatist a lot, but I think he's a strong bounty hunter lead. I'd use him in PvP on defense if you need teams. I wouldn't use him anywhere in PvP, but great leadership for Jango. Krrsantan, another new one. I don't think he's useful for his leadership. He goes with Jabba, not in the leadership. It's all about survivability. You get 30% max health protection and health steal. And when you get the contract, you get another 25% health steal max health. But the contract is difficult. Defeat the enemy leader. Usually the leader is pretty strong and you're not going to get to them right away. So it's hard to get to, and the payoff isn't as great. So I don't recommend using him anywhere. Mando, his leadership isn't what I recommend generally, but I did get some use out of him in this past conquest in the lead because I wanted the 2 support bounty hunters, Cad Bane and Greef, and then I wanted JML with Watt to protect, so his leadership was something I could eventually get the contract on. I don't have the Zeta, but the payout is while buffs score crits against enemies 20 times, so it takes a while, but it does happen eventually. Naturally, and in conquests, when you're just going through stuff a long time, use it against like Night Sisters or something, you can farm some kills, get to your contract. But you get some speed, which is nice, 35% tenacity and 30% crit chance. So like Greef Carga doesn't have a high crit chance normally, so he gets some extra. Then when you get the payout, they get 5% offense and health steal for each buffed ally. So it can be decent. I mean, it's not that great, but that's the only time I've used him as lead. Otherwise, I don't really think using him is a good idea, but someone tell me otherwise. Zam. I don't recommend using her leadership anywhere either. She's basically a GAC only character, otherwise she's useless in her leadership. It's all about thermals. You get 25% potency and recover 4% health protection when enemies dealt damage by thermal. So how often does that happen? And it's very weak. I mean, I get to throw out thermals for using special abilities. You gotta flip 20 of them to get your contract, and then all you get is more thermal detonators on all enemies. Okay, when you die, inflict thermals on enemies, which, why do you want that to happen? So, pretty bad leadership for her. Last but not least, Jabba the Hutt, and he's the only Galactic Legend bounty hunter, so obviously you want to use him wherever, whenever you can. It's really complicated. I'm not going to dive fully into it, but his contract is all the way down here. While buffed with this special buff, deal damage with an attack to enemies with thermal detonators 20 times. So it takes a little while, but it's pretty decent, and then he gives everyone 25% defense penetration, offense potency, and then allies with my kind of scum have 55% mastery for each stack, and recover 20% protection at the start of their turn. So, very strong. Obviously, as a Galactic Legend, he is the best bounty hunter. So there you go. That's all the bounty hunter leaderships, when to use them. There's only 5 that I think are good on a regular basis, which is Bossk, Aurra Sing, Fennec, Jango, and Jabba. And then a few others that are good in certain situations, like Boba Fett, Cad Bane, Dengar, Boba Fett, Scion of Jango, and Territory Wars. Otherwise, the rest of them, they just have a leadership for the sake of having a leadership to maintain this theme, so don't get bogged down in too many tricky things. Of course, there are situations that can pop up over time where a previously useless leadership becomes useful, so keep that in mind, and I'll be on a lookout for that as well. But anyway, let me know what you think. If I'm wrong about some of these leaderships, where have you gotten use out of them? But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.